Hello, my name is Sabrina Thompson, and I'm a fourth-year student in the Bachelor of Early Childhood Education program at Brock University. The focus of my research is the current policies and practices regarding gender-expansive resources available for families with non-binary and/or transgender children. As a self-defined ally of the LGBTQ+ community, I was curious about current policies and practices in place within my community and how specific they were to families with gender-expansive children. I wondered if supportive resources existed and how accessible they were to families. The purpose of the study was to conduct a content policy analysis of the current policies and structures in place that were specific to families with gender-expansive children within the Hamilton community, specifically the two main school boards, the City of Hamilton, and the Affiliated Services for Children and Youth, which is a source for professional development for early childhood educators in the Hamilton region. While working through the policies and found resources, my research was guided by the following questions. What are the supportive resources currently in place for families with non-binary and/or transgender children? What training is available for educators to support their role in supporting families with non-binary and transgender children? What are the current policies in place for creating gender-expansive environments and programming in the classroom? And what are the ethical responsibilities of educators to provide resources to families with non-binary and/or transgender children? Before we begin the study, I would like to take this time to provide definitions to the terminology that is used often in this study. These definitions were taken from two reputable Canadian resources that support and advocate for the LGBTQ+ community, Pflag and Egale. Gender expansive is an umbrella term used to refer to individuals who do not conform to gender stereotypes or expand ideas of gender expression or identity. An example of this stereotype is that dolls are for girls and blue is for boys. Gender expansive individuals may refer to themselves as non-binary, gender fluid, or gender queer. Transgendered refers to individuals whose gender identity does not reflect the gender assigned at birth due to physical anatomy. Non-binary is an umbrella term that refers to gender identities that are not exclusively man or woman. It's also important to understand the value of parental involvement in a child's education as it pertains to a child's academic and developmental success. The relationship between educator and family has a direct impact on the child, as seen in this graphic retrieved from the government document, How Does Learning Happen? Family involvement is a fundamental cornerstone of optimal childhood development. A strong partnership between educator and caregiver is crucial in establishing an inclusive, welcoming environment that supports healthy development. So why are supportive resources important? Just like children, every family has diverse needs and expectations. When educators acknowledge those needs and ensure that the families feel supported, a foundation of trust can be established. When trust is established, the building of a strong partnership between educator and family can begin. When there are resources that meet the needs for each family, the educator is acknowledging that they understand the family's needs and is providing support that meets those needs. This research was influenced by the theoretical ideas of Michel Foucault and Yuri Bronfenbrenner. The first theory is Michel Foucault's theory of post-structuralism. Foucault focused on the disruption of power and the taken-for-granted discourses and structures of what is deemed to be truth. This theory challenges that hierarchies of power between the all-knowing educator and student and reframes the dynamics of power. Foucault believed that how an educator views the image of a child directly influences the power dynamic. Regarding gender, post-structuralism dismisses the assumption that gender defines the human identity based on the social construct of sex assignment at birth. The second theory is Yuri Bronfenbrenner's ecological systems theory. This theory frames how children develop in the context of the environments in which they are exposed. The frames include the micro, meso, exo, macro, and chrono system. This theory was important to the research as it could help understand how the exclusion of families could impact the development of a child. In addition, how a community in which the child resides provides support to families could have a direct or indirect influence on a child's development. There was great foundation of literature already established on this topic of gender expansion in the early years. Surtees spoke of the importance of gender representation in the early childhood environment as a way of supporting gender expansive children. Much of their research provided specific examples as to how educators could create inclusive gender expansive classrooms and programming and the benefits for a child's development. Poulin-Cesfasson et al. Researched the secondary stressors experienced by families with non-binary and/or transgender children. Within their research, they noted that a lack of support within their extended family, community, society, and a children's school contributed to the stress and anxiety experienced by the family. In research conducted by Katz-Wise et al., families described feelings of mistrust between themselves and the child's educator as a result of the experiences faced by their gender-expansive child. This trauma of exclusion due to homophobia or bias presents a barrier to the development of a healthy partnership between educator and family. Payne and Smith discovered that while current guiding documents such as How Does Learning Happen and the Code of Ethics and Standards of Practice of the College of East Early Childhood Educators could be used to guide gender expansive practice, there are few policies that relate explicitly to supporting LGBTQ+ families and children. This study was conducted using a qualitative research approach to collect and analyze data from policies and resources independent of my research. This was used to identify any possible gaps in accessibility and implementation. This study focuses on the community in which I reside, Hamilton, Ontario. The research was exclusive to the websites of the following: the 2 school boards within the community, Hamilton Wentworth Catholic District School Board and Hamilton Wentworth District School Board, the City of Hamilton, and ASCII. The following terms were used to code the documents: gender expansive, LGBTQ+, transgender, and non-binary. Using the codes and terms, I explored the current policies and practices in place at the 4 listed sources and noted when each term would appear in each of the said policies and resources. Within the policies and resources, 7 themes emerged as the focus of each policy: mental health, equity, discrimination, gender equity, bullying, human rights, and sexual orientation. Among those, 3 emerged as having the most frequent appearances: mental health, equity, and bullying. Some discoveries as a result of this content analysis were: the Hamilton Wentworth Catholic District School Board had a significant increase of resources, more than its counterpart public school board. The City of Hamilton had the most available resources out of all 4. Each site provided resources that were individual to them. There was a noticeable lack of cohesion across all sites, and there was a significant lack of available professional development for educators. As a result of the research, some concepts and thoughts that are worth mentioning. As a fundamental cornerstone of a child's optimal development, the partnership between educator and family is dependent on a family's involvement within the child's education and early learning programming. Families with non-binary and/or transgender children may feel inadvertently excluded from the school community if not provided with formal support that speaks to their unique needs. Regardless of the inclusive environment established by the educator, without targeted support, a family may not feel that their needs are being met or may feel excluded due to social stigma or bias held by educators. While conducting this study, it was clear that the policies found on the 4 websites were not organized in a clear and consistent manner. This indicates that if the information was difficult to find when looking specifically for it for research purposes, it's highly likely that it would be just as difficult for educators and families to source it. This result suggests that there could be a potential barrier to receiving and providing any supportive resources that do exist based on a lack of organization of said resources. Diversity and inclusion cannot be viewed as umbrella terms. An inclusive environment is not a blanket concept. Inclusion needs to address the many needs of the children and families to truly support all areas of development. When educators seek to create an inclusive environment and program, they need to address the many facets of abilities and diversities within their classroom. In this study, there was an increased presence on the importance of creating gender-fluid classrooms, with emphasis placed on the dismantling of gender stereotypes. This is important work, but it can also be viewed as a generalization of what gender expansion looks like. There were significant connections between mental health and gender expansion within the found policies and resources. This frequent association indicates that there may be a concern for the mental health and well-being of gender expansive children, and there were supportive resources for this purpose. There was a significant lack of support for the mental health and well-being of the families of these children, indicating that secondary stress endured by the family was also a secondary thought of the supports needed. The implications of the study that it has on policy are the following. The importance of supporting a gender-expansive child's mental health is a priority of the sources studied. With this push for creating mental health supportive resources for the child, this implies that the same could be needed for the families, or perhaps a more targeted focus in the training of educators to provide this support. The amount of supportive resources found that focused on gender-expansive children implies that there's a great deal of attention being allocated to supporting non-binary and/or transgender children, but there is opportunity for creating policies and supportive resources for families and creating professional development for educators. The implications this study has on practice are the following. There are opportunities to develop specific professional development that speaks to supporting families with gender-expansive children as a primary focus. Targeted professional development could better prepare educators in supporting families with non-binary and/or transgender children. This lack of targeted training could lead to an educator being unable to create an inclusive environment that speaks to all needs and rather create a generalized sense of inclusion and equity. This research indicates that when an educator has targeted professional development that meets the needs of every child and family, the partnership between educator and family could strengthen with greater family involvement within the program due to the trust established from their needs being met. Some lingering thoughts to consider as it relates to this research. The concept of a family having access to a well-researched, highly inclusive mobilization of knowledge that is easily accessible is not a guarantee of parental involvement in partnerships. This research assumes that this lack of supportive resources is the barrier to parental involvement, but it's important to acknowledge that other barriers could and do exist, such as societal and educator bias. This research also assumes that this mobilization of knowledge is widely desired by all families, but fails to consider the biases found within the families that prevent the need or want for support. Further research is needed to understand how to address these barriers and support strong partnerships between educator and family. I have included some additional resources that I feel will support educators in creating strong partnerships with families and meeting the unique needs of gender-expansive children and their families. From Parents to Partners, Building a Family-Centered Early Childhood Education Program by Janice Kieser is inspired by the practice of Reggio Emilia and provides educators with effective strategies in creating inclusive programs and strengthening partnerships with families. The website naeyc.org has an excellent resource for educators for supporting families with gender nonconforming children. Author Katie Schaefer provides educators with strategies and potential questions that may arise when speaking with families. Supporting Gender Diversity in Early Childhood Classrooms by Pastel et al. And Gender Equality in Primary Schools, A Guide for Teacher by Helen Griffin are excellent sources of information that speak to strategies educators can employ in early learning environments. There are additional resources listed within the books for further learning. Thank you for your engagement in viewing this presentation and allowing me to present my findings with you. I hope this presentation was informative and I appreciate your time. I would like to thank Brock University for the opportunity to conduct this research and present my findings with you. Thank you.